Hey, what's up guys, Viper here today for a new video. And as some of you may know, with the beginning of 2021 we released a pretty special video in which we trained with a pretty unique guy. And some of you guys requested to learn a little bit more about this, and we thought to ourselves, why the hell not, this channel is meant to learn anyway, so this video will be dedicated to all of that. But first, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button to stay notified of our videos, and also go have a look at shop.regenbrothers.com for your quality tactical equipment. As can be seen over the history of our channel, we already got some basic tactical trainings from a former Special Forces operative from the Georgian military who is called Instructor Delta. Now, due to the whole situation of 2020, we couldn't do a lot with him, but we are still close friends and partners and still have plans as well. Now, recently we have met another guy that is actually working with Instructor Delta, and this man is of a whole other level. This guy is actually someone that trains active SOF and SWAT units all over the world and is called Romulus Mihu. This man has a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge in his pocket because of what he has done in the past couple of decades, and due to this he is an instructor in, for example, CQB, vehicle CQB, tactical rappelling, TCCC, close protection, reconnaissance and some more stuff. And due to all of this, he is also an instructor at the European Security Academy in Poland, which is probably one of the best academies in Europe where you can learn all this sort of stuff. So to give you an idea of what sort of level we're talking about here, Instructor Delta sometimes jokes to us that he, in the presence of Romulus, is actually just an assistant. So a while back we were able to test the ITF location we are able to hire from one of our partners, and together with Woody we decided to have a day of training, and for this we also invited Delta and Romulus to come over. They were free that day and decided to come over all the way from Luxembourg to us to do some training together that day.
Because here you can have this, so elbow.
Second guy is
Try to already there.
The result of this is that we ended up doing some more advanced tactical training, which was pretty dope and quite unexpected actually. But anyway, for this we have used Airsoft as a training platform, obviously. Because of the laws in our country, the limitations of the ITF location, but also due to the fact that Romulus could see at what level we were at in a safe way, especially in those tight areas. So as of our platform that we have used that day, obviously we went to GBBR. This one is a Tokyo Marui MWS in a CQBR version, for you guys that want to know. On top we ran our Aimpoint Pros, and on the front rail we had our Streamlight ProTac Rail Mount 2, which is a very good light system. And then the last thing that I had on my gun is a sample of a front grip that we have been testing for a while already from a new Dutch company that is dedicated to bring this stuff into the European market, and hopefully this will be available on our shop soon as well. As for our pistol, we have used the Cybergun Evan S9, which is one of our latest additions because we highly needed a pistol with a bit more kick and reliability than the plastic slides. And on the bottom of it we ran our Streamlight TLR 7A, which is ideal for those low light and blinding applications. To start off, Romulus asked us to show a little demonstration of a certain situation and how we would deal with it to see at what level we are at. We did this. To be honest, we were quite a bit rusty because it has been quite a long time that we could do some proper training together. But anyway, after a few minutes he decided that we were actually ready to build on further on our knowledge base. Of course, all thanks to the fact that we already had learned a lot from Instructor Delta in the past. We started first with the theory, and to give you a bit of a resemblance of how Romulus teaches, it's actually like a catalog that opens up to you with many different options available. It's not like, yeah, you only should be doing this because of that. He's more like a guy that rather gives you all the available options that have proven to be effective over the last couple of years by units all over the world. So it really is like a catalog. To give you an example of this, in the USA they use a certain technique. The Polish units, they apply that same technique, but they give it a little twist, and if we look at Brazilian units, they do it in a whole different way. Now the funny thing about this is that Romulus is a guy that likes to talk a lot, especially because he has a lot to talk about, which is certainly interesting, but it also can take quite a while. During his lessons he also told us that the only real rules that apply are the safety rules. We also heard this from Delta in the past, that actually all the rest outside the safety rules are simply advices, and it's up to you to decide which one you use. And we totally get why that is the case, because there is an immense amount of theory that goes behind all of that stuff. The practice often differs from the theory because real world situations do change in an instant often, but eventually it is up to the unit to decide which tactics or techniques they apply in the end. Romulus explained certain tactics and techniques that are suitable for CQB environments, and let us do some runs in order to get used to it. Once they got convinced of what we were doing, they decided to join us, and for this they put some unknown targets in the entire building for us to sweep the area run after run, in order to rehearse all of this stuff and get a bit used to it. We didn't get to do any 4s that day, but that will certainly be something for the future. So there were some noticeable things that kept with us from that day. One being was a certain situation where we ran into a room as a team, and I noticed that Romulus didn't cover a certain corner with a target, so I took that guy down. Immediately after that run he told me that he was actually doing it on purpose and expected me to take the guy down for him.
Go! I knew you were gonna take that one.
Now this is all cool and such, but he was actually testing a principle called filling the gaps, which basically means that you're reading a certain situation even if it doesn't go as planned, and you adapt to it to be present where you are needed most, and obviously I passed the test. Another thing is flagging, and especially in CQB environments it is not always easy to avoid it. An example of this is on the main floor of the ITF. There is a pretty narrow hallway with lots of possible points of contact, and if you have to move with your team through it, there isn't always a way to avoid that barrel from crossing your body. We all know it is best to avoid it at all times, but it is not always a practical thing. And for that reason it is so important that you have that trigger finger awareness and that safety manipulation burned into your system. Another thing we were able to test that day was a product from a brand in the USA called Fox Fury. The product is called the TEDD, which is basically a non-explosive flashbang device. So it actually uses electronics to recreate the distracting sound and noise like a flashbang does. The advantage of this is that it is cheaper to do training with, and also the fact that it is actually safer for example, raids in drug labs and stuff like that. Another interesting thing we covered was the fact whether you should use low or high ready in CQB environments. Now this goes along with a bit of history, because many years ago, when the US Army and Navy started to do operations in CQB environments, they had to come up with some way in order to not flag one another when doing certain movements. And for that the Army applied the low ready technique, which is basically pointing the barrel down, so that if a shot happens to go off, it would have been into the ground and nobody got hurt. Now the Navy on the other hand doesn't like to create holes in their boats, and for that reason they decided to go with the high ready technique. Now at a certain point in history, the Navy and the Army had to do operations together, and then is the question, which one should we apply? Now in the end they decided to go with the high ready. So there are two main reasons why they chose to go with the high ready. One being a high ready allows you to keep in control of your weapon at all times. With the low ready that is not necessarily the case, because if it is down like this, someone can easily block it off and you're not able to do anything anymore. With a high ready that is different because it allows you to still maneuver and be able to fight and keep in control with your weapon at all times. Also the fact is that a high ready allows you to protect your neck area, especially when guys try to approach you with a machete or stuff like that. The second reason is the fact that with a high ready it is far less likely to flag someone than with a low ready. With a low ready you can still cross someone's legs or bottom. Also another fact is that if a shot does happen to go off, then it is still in the air and not into the ground, which can ricochet into someone's legs or whatever. And even if a ricochet happens on a wall or something like that, it will still go up into the air. Another thing that quite surprised us that day was the fact that according to Romulus's knowledge, the limited penetration techniques, which are widely being used in CQB environments, are in fact not invented by the Israeli. And we all know that the Israeli actually market this stuff quite hugely, but it is actually invented by the British, and these guys have been using it for decades long before the Israeli even knew about it. So the book isn't always written by the publisher, so to speak. Another thing we had to deal with that day, which we are actually not very familiar with because it is not very present in the airsoft scene in the area where we live, is the fact that we needed to deal with doors, or what if someone is behind a door. For this, various units across the globe have come up with their own techniques in order to deal with them. We have seen quite a few of them, but in the end there isn't one ultimate way to do it because they all have their pros and cons. But we can tell you one tip, and that is to always follow the path of least resistance.
Path of least resistance.
Now a thing that we have noticed, some of you guys commenting on the previously released video about this, was the fact that we moved rather on the slow side than doing it all fast paced. That is true, but it also has a reason behind it, a few in fact. One being that it is not always easy to apply all that theory you've just learned an hour ago and do it directly fast paced into practice. It all takes time to get that stuff into your system. The second thing is that you always want to move as fast as you can shoot. This is because, especially in CQB areas, you can easily create gaps between each other. There is not coverage that needs to be covered, and this way you're actually obstructing the whole team dynamics in order to do it correctly. So it's better to slow things down. And that is in fact something you always must apply when it comes to training how to shoot. You want to do it slow, and then the speed will build up in time when rehearsing it hours and hours and hours after each other. Some other comments we have seen in that particular video were things like, yeah, if you enter a room like that, just with the two of you, you won't make it in any way. We totally get that standpoint if we're talking about a 4-on-4 situation, whereas someone else is expecting you and has his weapon ready to fire at you. But the thing is, you don't always have to limit that view to that 4-on-4 view. There are also situations where you have a hostage to rescue or where you have to do an arrest. Then you literally want to have that room dominated as quickly as possible. Also, the way how you approach this kind of stuff depends on a few factors. One being, for example, the intel you got up front. What is the situation on the inside? How many threats are there? The second factor are resources. Do you have access to flashbangs or any breaching tools? And the third one is timing. Timing is actually one of the biggest factors that decide how you approach a certain situation. If a threat is imminent, you have to move quickly. Another thing we have seen quite often is that limited penetration, or LP in short, is being considered as the ultimate way to do CQB these days because it is hugely being marketed. But the fact is that in reality that is not always the case. One being that it is a rather slow technique, so it is not always best to choose it when time is of essence. And the second thing is also that in the real world walls are still penetrable, some walls are, and the fact is that if a threat is expecting you, then you can get a nasty surprise by being shot through a wall. In the end, both Limited penetration and dynamic entry techniques each have their own place in CQB environments and sometimes even follow up in one another. In the end, it is up to the unit to decide which one to apply and to adapt to the situation at hand. And this material takes hundreds up to even thousands of hours in order to do it right. Another cool thing we realized only after looking at this picture was the following. Woody served in our Belgian military along with the pretty famous Paracommandos. The guy from the ITF facility is actually still serving in the Belgian military. Then we have Delta, who was a special operative in the Georgian military. And then we have Romulus, which we don't know what he exactly was, but it must have been something freaking amazing. And then you have us, two brothers without any military or law enforcement background that are very dedicated to learn all about this stuff and have fun while doing so. Another thing we've seen in the comments is some of you guys asking us, what do you actually get out of such a course or training session? Well, the truth is a lot. The first thing is that you expand or rehearse your knowledge base on how to handle certain situations. The second thing is that these sessions allow you to make your individual and team dynamics more efficient. An example of an individual one is how you, for example, move through a doorway rapidly and efficiently without any obstruction. There are just two simple steps you have to take, but that's one of those things you learn. Also, another thing when it comes to team dynamics is, for example, how do you conquer a room? What about sectors? What about different entry methods? What about hand signals and all stuff like that? The third and the last thing is that you get rid of bad habits because you're being analyzed and corrected all the time. Now, thanks to this training session, things that weren't clear to us in the past now do make sense. The thing is, guys like us that haven't had any military or law enforcement background, especially in these tactics, learn this kind of stuff, of course, from the internet. All from different inputs, the various instructors, various channels, with all their own knowledge base and idea behind how things are taken care of. But the thing is that this can also create certain contradictions on how you approach certain situations. And the thing is, with these lessons you actually create some clarity, and that is a big value of what they bring. Now, talking a bit about the instructor himself, Romulus Mihu, we can see that everything he does is basically trained down to the bare bone. If we do a run with him, we can see some certain aspects that he applies that he didn't even explain to us yet, but that totally makes sense to why he does them. At last, Romulus has seen what we are capable of with our airsoft guns thus far, and actually has invited us to do training courses with him in Poland at ASA with live ammunition, which is now certainly something on our bucket list. So hopefully we can do more firearm stuff soon in the future as well, aside all the airsoft stuff that we're currently doing. So guys, hopefully we gave you some inside view on what it is like to get professional training and what value it offers as well. If you guys want to have a look at what both Romulus and Delta offer as courses, you can have a look at the links we've put in the description down below. Thank you for watching, and you'll see us next week.